With Generation 9 right around the corner, and with, by the time of this video, only 12 days to go until it actually releases, I thought it would be fitting to look back at previous generations before we turn our heads to Generation 9. So in this video, I will be evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of every single generation, ordering them from worst to best. Please keep in mind that this is a very personal list. There may be some controversial picks here, and yes, nostalgia plays a huge role. Also, opinion changes over time, so please don't come at me if you have a different opinion. So then, without further ado, let's get into the video. The way these sort of rankings work is you always have to rank something at the bottom. In my opinion, the generation that deserves to be at the bottom of this list is Generation 7. Yep, that's right. I didn't really enjoy this generation. I don't think this pick is also surprising, since a lot of people seem to be of the same opinion as me, with the Z-move mechanic being, without a doubt, the dumbest mechanic Pokemon has ever seen, the gyms being replaced with trials, terrible replayability, and the store progression just all around feeling slow, if I'm being honest. I personally didn't like the addition of Ultra Beasts or the addition of the Ultra Wormhole for that matter, which made shinies way too easy to get. As a shiny hunter myself, this definitely took away from the rarity of having shinies, because everyone would just have tons of shinies. However, that alone doesn't justify me ranking this game so low. I think it's important to differentiate between Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon. When Sun and Moon came out, I was actually reasonably happy with the games. I bought them on the release day and played through the whole game while having a pretty good time. Yes, they lacked on everything I just talked about, but the story was actually not bad, and the new Pokemon designs I actually liked. Along with a reasonable level of difficulty, of course, which actually surprised me. I found myself having to retry a gym battle multiple times, which was something that was unheard of before, at least to me. What I didn't like, however, were Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. These games, to me, felt like virtually the same games all over again. The year these games released, I just felt let down as a Pokemon fan. As standalone games, Ultra Sun and Moon are very complete games. I just feel that these games are too similar for me to have enjoyed both of them, along with all of my other gripes, of course. Well, that concludes my lowest pick, so it's only gonna get better from now on. So without wasting any time, my pick for number 7 is Generation 1. I just couldn't bring myself to give this gen the lowest ranking, given that this generation is what started it all. Yes, the games were buggy as hell. Yes, they are, compared to the newer gens, worse in pretty much every area, but is it really fair to compare? It had to start somewhere, right? And for what it is, I believe Gen 1 was a perfect introduction into the world of Pokemon. It invented this formula where the franchise that we still know and love so many years later still works, and it introduced classic Pokemon that we still see in the mainline games today. I believe when we saw the Gen 1 remakes in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the problems of Gen 1 compared to the newer games start to really show. For example, this is just one thing, there was no special defense and special attack, and instead these two stats were just one stat. This made the combat system very imbalanced, and in general, the combat system was just way too simple. And honestly, I don't want to rant about everything that was bad in this gen, because it was the first. Everything else, everything that we know followed from this. While the games themselves may not have been the best, the impact that they left and the foundation that they built for the franchise will never be forgotten. And for that fact alone, this generation would never deserve the lowest spot on this list. Okay, so now we're slowly entering the generations that I didn't necessarily find bad, but I didn't think they stood out either. The most okay generation there is in my opinion, Generation 8. Pokemon Sword and Shield were a first big step in many things that we, the Pokemon community, had wanted to have and have dreamt of since we were children. I am mainly talking about the wild area here. When I saw this in the trailers, I was probably the most hype I'd ever been for any Pokemon game, period. Turns out, I was hereby kind of shooting myself in the leg, building unrealistic expectations. What the wild area ended up being was far from bad, it was just okay. I think this can be said about the entire game. The infamous tree textures, the barren land in the wild area, the Pokemon loading in, the laggy online feature, the repetitiveness, it all got old very fast. I don't find there's much to say about this game, it's really just okay. At least it somewhat revived competitive play, which I do thoroughly enjoy. Sword and Shield are just honestly incredibly mid. Next up, we have some true classics. My number 5 pick is going to be Gen 2. Now, while I haven't played through Pokemon Gold and Silver, I have played Pokemon Crystal, and let me tell you, these games are great. Already, just by looking at the cover, I am drawn to these games. Generation 2 introduced color to the games, along with an absolutely fantastic post-game, allowing you to literally travel to another region. With color, new things were possible. Something very dear to my heart was introduced to the franchise in Generation 2, and that is shiny Pokemon. It is here where the community of shiny hunters, the community which I hold so dear to my heart, was born, with the infamous guaranteed shiny Gyarados at the Lake of Rage being the introduction to shinies. I believe that it is, in general, fair to say that Gen 2 was just Gen 1 on steroids, but in a good way. Tons of things that Gen 1 was lacking were improved on, along with amazing new features. The day and night cycle, the calendar system, Pokemon genders and breeding are all additions to the franchise that are universally loved and still exist in the modern day Pokemon games. Pokemon Crystal also remains the only game in which one can legitimately attain and shiny hunt a Celebi, one of my all-time favorite Pokemon. With all that being said, Gen 2 has its flaws and is far from a perfect generation. Two of its biggest flaws being pacing and Pokemon. So what do I mean by that? I don't really love the Gen 2 decks, if I'm honest. A lot of designs are bad and just weak. And the Pokemon that I do like and that are strong are only available in the post-game. The consequence of this is a pretty low replayability since your team will look virtually the same every game with your starter and the shiny Gyarados. While not being the perfect Gen 2 does some things incredibly well, which is why it deserves to be the number 5 spot on this list. On 4th place is a generation that I have a love-hate relationship with. For this spot, I picked Generation 6. This includes Pokemon X and Y alongside ORAS. X and Y are games that I thoroughly enjoyed when I played them for the first time. I enjoy pretty much everything from the music to the Pokemon and to the characters. These were the first 3D Pokemon games, hence there was an extra level of excitement when playing them for the first time. I absolutely adore Mega Evolution. This was my opinion when the game's released, and it is my opinion still, it remains unchanged. Just look at Mega Charizard X, that is one of the best designs I've ever seen. However, there are some essential gripes that I do have with these games. First of all, the cities, especially Lumino City. Can we talk about how impossible it is to navigate the city? I would find myself having to randomly search the entire city every time I wanted to find something. There also isn't really a post-game, and let's be honest, these games were way too easy. Like even easier than Pokemon games usually are, and that's saying something. Yet, this game is able to make up for this with its amazing, and I mean amazing, designs. And come on, the roller skating was easily the best thing about these games. Super smooth, super fun, and super convenient. Gen 6 is also comprised of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. These two games I like a lot. The flying with Latios and Latias to catch all those legendary Pokemon was one of the best features I have ever seen, period. What X and Y lacked in post-game is more than made up for in these games, delivering one of the best post-games in any main series Pokemon game. All in all, this generation is easily deserving of the 4th spot on this list. And now we enter the top 3. These gens are all elites and I loved every single one of them. I don't believe my pick for number 3 needs any introduction, since it is widely known as a fan favorite and it's Gen 4. You might be asking yourself why I didn't rank this generation higher, and the reason for that is that I never really got hooked on these games, so I have less of an emotional connection to them. I did really enjoy Pokemon Platinum more than I enjoyed Diamond and Pearl for the exact same reason as everyone else, and that is the post-game. The Distortion World, to this day, remains the coolest area I have ever seen in any Pokemon game, ever. Cynthia was the best champion we've ever gotten. Arceus is, well, the literal god of Pokemon. I mean, how can't you love that? And staying with the legendaries, I mean, wow, Game Freak really outdid themselves when it came to legendaries and mythicals. Darkrai, Shaman, Giratina, and Manaphy, all those top-notch designs. Gen 4 introduced some very much needed evolutions to some older Pokemon. It introduced Wi-Fi battles, trading alongside a multitude of quality of life changes due to the touchscreen now being a thing. And then we have Heart Gold, Soul Silver. These games are literally its predecessors on steroids, and let me tell you, Game Freak did everything right here. It is, to this day, the best way the following Pokemon were implemented. The variety of legendary Pokemon in these games is absolutely staggering, like these games are absolutely perfect for shiny hunters. Then there's also the battle against Red, which is the single best boss fight in any Pokemon game. These games just all around felt like the perfect upgrade from the previous gen with minimal drawbacks. Easily deserving of the third place. Now we only have 2 remaining. To be honest, place 2 and 3 could have been interchanged. I wasn't quite sure since I liked them similarly, but in the end, I decided to go with Gen 3 over Gen 4 to claim the number 2 spot in this list. Why, you might ask? Well, it's honestly just Emerald Diff. This game is so packed with brilliancy, and by brilliancy I mean Rayquaza, that it just wouldn't sit right with me ranking this gen under Gen 4. The lore behind Groudon and Kyogre and Rayquaza is brilliant, and the map is honestly one of my favorite out of any Pokemon game. I just love some of these locations. The evil team actually makes sense, and the regional Pokemon are just so good. Oh, and did I mention how freaking cool Rayquaza is, by the way? Just saying. I like Rayquaza. But it's not just that. These games had a special feel to them. I believe a lot of this was contributed by the music. Gen 3 is honestly some of the best Pokemon music out there, and it just elevates the games so much. There is honestly, I feel like an epicness surrounding these games. They feel grandiose and impactful, like you're actually impacting the digital world your trainer is in. They just feel like they were ahead of their time, and I think these games really encapsulate what a great Pokemon experience is supposed to be. So I am really comfortable giving them my number 2 spot on this list. And so we have arrived at the objectively, factually, undisputed best generation of all time, in my opinion. And it's, surprise surprise, Generation 5. I have so much love for this generation that I am really not sure where to start. I believe what keeps reigniting my nostalgia for this gen is the music. This generation has the best music in any Pokemon games, hands down. I cannot describe how great this music actually is, so please, let's just take a listen. But apart from its music, these games have so much to offer. Black and White were the perfect introduction to the Unova region. Contrary to popular opinion, I loved most of the new designs in this gen, and I kept finding myself catching Pokemon on every single route, which I had never done in any other gen. And the story, don't get me started on the story. This is not a Pokemon storyline, it's just too good. The idea that we should be questioning trapping these creatures in what is virtually a cage, forcing them to battle each other is a revolutionary idea. Game Freak is hereby basically questioning their own franchise. It's bold, but it's executed so well. Ghetsis is such a great villain, and N is my favorite character in all of Pokemon. The ending of Black and White actually made me shed some tears, because I was legitimately attached to the characters, exactly because this game showed us that it is okay to catch and battle with Pokemon if you treat them as your friends. And I actually felt a connection to the Pixels that was my team at the time. The fact that these games could achieve this is just staggering to me. I also love the addition of the moving 2D sprites. I think Gen 5 is the best Pokemon has ever looked, from design to animations to colors. Now, some say that Black and White has lacked in many regions, for example, let's say the post-game. And while I do agree with that, I think that Black and White 2 make up for this. I'm sure you all know what I'm referring to here. But seriously, Black and White 2 perfectly completed this generation. All in all, there's so little not to like about these games. I love the mythicals Meloetta, Keldeo, Genesect, with Genesect being my favorite mythical ever. Reshiram and Zekrom have the best lore I've ever seen from any Pokemon ever. This region has amazing locales with a mysterious feel to them, like the Abyssal Ruins, Challenger's Cave, the Desert Resort, the Giant Chasm, and the Dragon Spiral Tower. All this, along with a whole bunch of nostalgia, makes this generation my undisputed favorite generation of all time, and I cannot wait for the remakes when they inevitably come out. And that will conclude the video. Let me know if you agree or do disagree. Please let me know your opinions. If you enjoyed, I would appreciate if you could leave a sub, and yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.